Hi, Macy. So, time for question 6 and 7. I'm going to roll these together. They're very closely related. The question is, what are some of my leadership traits that I value the most, or characteristics? And the second question is, what are my thoughts on commitment and teamwork? Well, I think those are very closely related, and let's talk about it. I believe, uh, recently read a very good book by Jocko Winslet and his partner called Extreme Ownership. And I think if there's one leadership characteristic that I value the most, it's taking ownership and going from there. So um, I think there are two kinds of leaders, and this is again not original thoughts with me, but through people I have read and studied, and I happen to agree with this statement. There are two types of leaders: effective leaders and ineffective leaders. And it all boils down to um, the key trait of taking ownership. What does it mean to take ownership? Does it mean just to present a challenge, lay out your expectations, and have your team execute? If they fail, they fail. If they win, they win. I couldn't, that couldn't be further from the truth in my mind. I think any good leader, any effective leader, has to take 100% ownership in his goals and objectives, in his mission. What does it mean to take 100% ownership? So we talked about, so the second question is, what is my attitude towards commitment and teamwork? Let's look at commitment. I think commitment equals ownership. You don't just commit to a task, you take ownership of it. Part of ownership is committing to um, meeting the expectations and the goals and objectives of the project. In doing that, part of that is, but you achieve that through the execution of your team. So teamwork is the other side of the coin. On one side, you have ownership and commitment where you own the project, pass or fail. You can't blame it on others. There are no others. There's you effectively managing your team and executing the objective. That's why I've always said, and I'm really big on metrics, and I know you've helped me on several metrics projects. Metrics are never for the team that is being measured. Metrics are scorecards for the leaders. They're for us to understand where we're failing and where we're succeeding. Who do we need to pay special attention to? Do we have the right people in the right roles? Are we giving the proper training and tools to do their job? Does our team have the right mindset? Do they have a growth mindset, or do they have a fixed mindset? A fixed mindset would be, hey, I come in, I clock in at 8, clock out at 5, I did my thing. I did the best I could. Whereas a growth mindset is more towards understanding the why and executing against our business goals and objectives. So, back to metrics and scorecards. I believe metrics and scorecards are for the leaders. This is how we know if we're being effective or not. Are we leading the team and meeting their needs and objectives? I'll quote the book Extreme Ownership again. One of the things he says, and I love, don't know if it's original with him, but he says there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And I believe that. So, but to believe that as a leader, I have to be willing to take 100% ownership in the project or the mission or the goal or the company objective. It has to be on me. If it fails or passes or meets expectations, I take the blame. So on the one hand, you have ownership as a leadership characteristic, and recognizing that in order to execute against that ownership, you have to have good, solid teams. We talked a little bit about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, what makes a good functional team, and surely there are tons of information, deep dives into the details over these overly simplistic statements that I'm making. But those are the basics, and that's where you have to start. I think the 2 most important leadership characteristics are the leader's willingness to take 100% ownership and his ability to lead an effective team that can execute those objectives. Thank you, Macy. I hope this answers all your questions. Please feel free to reach out. Anyone who may see this video, if you have additional questions or want to go in more depth with some of these subjects, I'm happy to do that. Thank you very much.